This is the Biological Resource Information Program for the Big Lagoon Slip and Slide Project, brought to you by Alluvian Biological Consulting. This training has 4 broad objectives. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll be familiar with all 4 of these points. First, we're going to cover the definition and implications of take, and then we'll move on to what your responsibilities are if you encounter a regulated species. We'll have a brief introduction to the protected species associated with this project, and then we'll go over some general mitigation measures that need to be followed in order to prevent any incidents of take. So let's talk a little bit about take. Take is a very broadly defined term. California has a different definition for it than the federal government does, but they're both very similar. So for the federal definition, take means to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. California's definition is to hunt, pursue, catch, capture, or kill, or attempt to do any such actions. They're very, very similar, and they both mean pretty much the same thing. Anything that constitutes harassment or more is going to qualify as take. And the reason that it's important for you to know what take is because take of listed or regulated species can carry some pretty hefty penalties. Criminal penalties can go as high as $50,000 and up to a year in jail time in some instances. And civil penalties can get almost as high as the criminal penalties financially. So it's incredibly important that you know what take is and you avoid take as much as you possibly can so you can avoid these penalties. So before I introduce you to some of these listed and regulated species that we might encounter on the project, the first thing we need to go over is what your responsibilities are if you see one of these species. First and foremost, do not touch or approach the listed or regulated species. Can't stress that enough. Second thing on the list, if the species is in the immediate project area and is at risk of being injured or killed, you need to stop work immediately. What needs to happen then is you need to notify the designated biologist or the biological monitor. If one of us isn't there, if the monitor is not present, you need to contact Alluvian Biological Consulting directly. The phone number is in each of your books, and it's here on the presentation. The principal biologist on this project is Gennaro Lockhart. Only a qualified and permitted biologist can handle and move regulated species from the project site. This is a complete list of special status species that may occur on or near the project site. As you can see, there are quite a few of them. About half carry some sort of federal protection, and all of them carry some form of state protection. So now let's look at the listed and regulated species that may occur on or near the project site. Northern red-legged frog is a true frog with characteristic smooth skin and a narrow waist. Adults can reach lengths of up to 3.5 inches long and have dark facial masks as well as a single characteristic light stripe along their jawline. The skin color is between brown and reddish brown, and this species also has a readily apparent dorsolateral fold that runs from each eye down to its tail. Northern red-legged frogs require still waters for breeding, and they're rarely found from any great distance from aquatic breeding sites. The still waters of ponds, marshes, or stream pools are essential for this species. Moreover, they have a clear preference for thickly vegetated shorelines. Coastal tailed frog is a small, flat, toad-like frog measuring 1 to 2 inches in length. Their fingertips are hardened like claws to help the frog crawl among the rocks on swift stream bottoms. Their skin usually ranges between olive, brown, gray, or reddish above with yellow and gray mottling, and they also bear a pale yellow or greenish triangle on their snout and a dark eye stripe. Males are smaller than females and have a tail, which is actually a copulatory organ. This species is mostly nocturnal, but is often seen moving on creek banks in daylight. Adults are usually active from April to October. It inhabits cold, clear, rocky streams in wet forest. They do not inhabit ponds or lakes. Del Norte salamander is a medium-sized, slender salamander measuring 4 to 6 inches in length. Limbs are relatively short and their toes are slightly webbed. Their dorsal coloration is dark brown or black, and there's a reddish or reddish-brown straight-edged mid-dorsal stripe that may extend from the head to the tip of the tail, and this stripe may be less pronounced in older animals. The Del Norte salamander is also a fully terrestrial salamander, with a clutch size ranging from 3 to 11 eggs. There is no free-living larval stage for this species, as juveniles hatch completely metamorphosed, measuring about an inch long. The species occurs in areas of mostly talus and rocky substrates in redwood or Douglas fir forest. It's typically encountered among moss-covered rocks or under bark and other forest litter, usually avoiding very wet areas. Southern torrent salamander is a medium-sized, slender salamander. Adults range in length from 2 to 3 inches, and they also bear a short tail and a small head with large protuberant eyes. Their dorsal coloration is a speckled brown or olive, and their eyes contain flecks of metallic gold color. It's a primarily aquatic salamander, but is capable of terrestrial activity, with clutch sizes usually containing 8 to 11 eggs. Development is slow, as lab-reared eggs have taken up to 210 days to hatch. Larvae develop over 3 to 5 years in water, growing short, stubby gills and a tail that does not extend up the back. This species occurs in areas of humid coastal drainages. It is typically encountered in contact with cold and clear water bodies that run through talus and under rocks. Marbled murrelet is a relatively small auk, measuring about 10 inches in length, with a slender black bill. It has pointed wings, and the plumage varies by season. During the non-breeding season, plumage is typically white underneath, with a black crown, nape, wings, and back. But during the breeding season, the plumage changes to a brown mottling all over the body and face. Marbled murrelets are coastal birds that occur mainly on saltwater within 1.2 miles of shore. However, nesting marbled murrelets have been found up to 22 miles inland in Northern California. In California, nests are most often located in coast redwood dominated stands with scattered Sitka spruce. The species nests from mid-April to late September, with peak activity occurring from mid-June to late July in California. The mature or old-growth forest stands used for nesting are generally characterized by large trees greater than 32 inches in diameter and a multi-storied canopy. Individuals tend to nest in the oldest trees in the stand. Northern spotted owl is a medium-sized dark brown owl that measures 16 to 19 inches in length. Females are usually larger than males, and the wingspan is approximately 42 inches. It primarily inhabits landscapes with a mix of old and younger forest types in California. This species range extends along the Pacific coast from extreme southern British Columbia to Marin County in Northern California. It nests in cavities or on platforms in large trees and will use abandoned nests of other species. Spotted owls form long-term pair bonds and remain in the same geographic area year after year. Northern spotted owls are ready to reproduce at 2 years of age, but do not typically breed until they are 3 years old. Males and females mate in February or March, and the females lay 2 or 3 eggs in March or April. She then incubates the eggs for about 30 days, and after hatching, the young owls stay with the female 8 to 10 days and fledge in 34 to 36 days. The hunting and feeding is done by the male during this time, and the young owls remain with the parents until late summer to early fall. They then leave the nest territory and form their own winter feeding range. Migratory and nesting birds are a fairly common concern on most California construction projects, and that's because they carry with them a federal and state protection. This applies to most birds in California. In fact, practically all birds in California are protected under these two federal and state protections, with the exception of some invasive and non-native species. For the purposes of this project, the nesting season is going to be from February 1st to September 15th, and that means that we anticipate nesting to occur between those two dates. although it is possible that nesting can occur sometime outside of them. Birds can use all sorts of structures to build their nests. Some nest directly on the ground, some will use low grasses or shrubs, others will nest in trees, and in some cases birds will use man-made structures to build their nests, in particular swallows, swifts, and other birds that like cliff faces or rocky surfaces. They'll use bridges or the weep holes within bridges to construct their nests and rear their young. These birds can be pretty tolerant to human-induced noise and disturbance, so some are not very deterred by a lot of human activity. So it's important that we get deterrents up to keep these birds away as much as possible. Tidewater gobies are a relatively small goby that rarely exceed a total length of 2 inches. Individuals have a similar shape to most gobies, with an elongate body, a rounded tail fin, and pelvic fins that form a ventral disc on its underside. Coloration can be olive green to transparent, with dark mottling on the back, sides, and dorsal fin. Tidewater gobies are endemic to California coastal wetlands. They prefer lagoons and lower stream reaches with muddy bottoms where the water is brackish to fresh. Populations can be found throughout the state of California, all the way from Del Norte County to San Diego County. And individuals can live up to 3 years and feed mainly on benthic invertebrates, which might be crustaceans or mollusks, and spawning occurs year-round, although reproduction peaks during summer months when water temperatures reach 18 to 22 degrees Celsius. Green sturgeon are large, distinctively shaped freshwater fish, and they can reach up to 2 meters in length. Individuals bear many features typical of other sturgeon species, including a shark-like tail, lines of bony plates that run down the length of their body, and a subterminal mouth that's surrounded by barbels. Green sturgeons can be distinguished from their co-occurring relatives, like white sturgeon, by their olive green coloration and their elongated and shovel-like snout. Green sturgeon, like many salmon species, are anadromous, spending most of their life in the ocean, but returning to freshwater habitats to spawn. Adults can live for over 25 years, and they feed mainly on bottom-feeding shrimp as well as lancets. Chinook salmon is the largest species of salmon found in the United States. Apart from their size, adults can be identified by the black spots on their back, as well as on their dorsal, adipose, and tail fins. The gums are usually dark at the base of the teeth, and breeding individuals range in color between olive brown to purple. Chinook salmon are anadromous, which means they're born in freshwater, then migrate to the ocean, and then return as mature adults to freshwater to their natal streams to spawn. Breeding adults die shortly after spawning, but eggs are deposited within coarse gravel in streams and fast-flowing water. And depending on the water temperature, eggs may hatch after 90 to 150 days. Young fry will remain up to 2 years in streams before migrating to the ocean to complete the majority of their growth. Coho salmon is an anadromous Pacific salmon species, typically 24 to 38 inches in length. The breeding coloration of this species looks like that of Chinook salmon. However, coho salmon lack spots on the lower lobe of their tail fin and display a vivid red to pink color on their sides. Males also have a distinctly hook-shaped mouth with light coloration on their lower gums. As I said before, coho salmon are anadromous, which means they rear in freshwater, migrate to the ocean, and return as mature adults to their natal streams to spawn. Breeding adults die shortly after spawning, and eggs are deposited within small to medium gravel in streams with moderate water flow. And depending on the water temperature, eggs hatch after 90 to 150 days. Young fry will remain for up to 2 years in the streams or lakes where they were born before migrating to the ocean to complete the majority of their growth. Steelhead is another Pacific salmon species, with adults ranging in size from 19 to 33 inches in length. The breeding coloration of this species will look very similar to that of the Chinook salmon. However, steelhead are noticeably slimmer than Chinook salmon, and B, will not develop that hooked beak that Chinook salmon develop as they start to breed in the channels. Steelhead are anadromous, which means they're born in freshwater, they'll migrate to the ocean to complete the majority of their growth, and then they'll return to their natal stream to spawn. In the case of steelhead salmon, not all adults will die after spawning. In fact, 9% of adults will survive to spawn again. Eggs are deposited within gravel beds in streams with fast-flowing water, and depending on the water temperature, eggs hatch after 21 to 28 days. The fry are going to remain and develop in streams and lakes for about 3 years before migrating out to the ocean to complete their growth cycle. And a fun fact here, steelhead are genetically identical to rainbow trout. The only difference between steelhead and rainbow trout is that rainbow trout, instead of migrating out to the ocean to complete their growth, they're going to remain in freshwater their entire lives. White-footed vole is a small rodent native to northwest California and Oregon. It bears a blunt face and a hairless tail. It has dark brown fur and white coloration on the top sides of its feet, distinguishing this species from other co-occurring vole species. Now, white-footed vole are notoriously elusive, making study of their life history particularly challenging. Information on lifespan and reproductive behavior is sorely lacking, but populations range from the Columbia River in Oregon to Humboldt County in California. In California, these voles prefer humid coniferous forests adjacent to streams with alder, bay, or maple thickets. This species is herbivorous, feeding exclusively on leaves from trees and shrubs. There are quite a few species protection measures for this project. We'll cover some of the important ones here, but the full list of protection measures can be found in your training materials. Please review them. So if a listed or regulated species shows up on or near the project site, we'll need to set up a protective radius for it. The radius is a no-work buffer that needs to remain in place until the animal leaves the area. And for this project, all regulated species carry a radius of 100 feet, except for marbled murrelet and northern spotted owl, which require slightly larger radii. There are quite a few general protection measures associated with this project. To begin, there are several noise restrictions that need to be adhered to. From August 6th to September 15th, noise-generating equipment can be used without a noise level restriction from 2 hours after sunrise to 2 hours before sunset. Additionally, following September 15th, noise may not exceed the levels dictated in the project specifications and the permits from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. within 50 feet of the construction area. Also, construction equipment and personnel are not allowed within the wetted channel. And finally, there are some specific considerations for tidewater goby here. If there is a breeding habitat near the project site, then a visual barrier needs to be constructed between the work area and the breeding site. And pile driving will also need to take place at a sufficient distance to prevent barotrauma to nearby fish. Additionally, all vehicles must enter the worksite from the highway. No access is permitted from Big Lagoon Beach. Invasive species removal within the root health zone of a 24-inch diameter tree or larger must be done with hand tools. And this applies to any groundbreaking activity that happens within the root zone of 24-inch trees. Construction will not take place during heavy rain that could potentially produce erosion or sediment to wash from the work area. And finally, environmentally sensitive area fencing should be constructed as the first order of work on this project. If work is performed in the stream channel or on its banks, BMPs must be in place, and the National Weather Service forecast must be monitored at least 72 hours out. All work shall cease if the 72-hour forecast indicates a greater than 60% chance of rain or if precipitation occurs. Also, no concrete in any form is permitted to enter the stream. All concrete and concrete washings should be contained on site. All equipment used on site should be free of leaks. Any equipment at risk of leaking fluids should be placed on pads or liners to prevent or absorb spillage. There should be no staging equipment or storage areas within the stream. All equipment should be maintained at least 100 feet away from aquatic habitat. And finally, all trash should be stored in a predator-proof container and transported from the project site daily. And to wrap up, a few quick bird protection measures for this project. The first being that vegetation needs to be removed outside of the bird breeding season and also the northern spotted owl breeding seasons. And so that's from September 15th to February 1st. And take of any migratory birds is going to be avoided during construction activities for this project. Active nests of birds of any kind being constructed, maintained, defended by one or more parents, regardless of whether or not there's an egg in that nest, those are going to be considered active nests. So we'll finish up here with some important takeaways from this presentation. First and foremost, don't touch or approach any regulated species. Notify your biological monitor immediately if you see something that might be listed or regulated. We anticipate active bird nests to be found on this project site anywhere between February 1st and September 15th. As always, stay within the designated construction zone and report all incidents to your biological monitor and to your supervisor. No hazardous waste, pollutants, or debris can be permitted to enter the water bodies. And that goes hand in hand with maintaining your BMPs and adhering to the plaque requirements to prevent erosion and sediment loss. And last and most importantly, you and your company are wholly responsible for following the measures stated in the plaques and following the guidance of this Biological Resources Information Program. I appreciate you following along with this presentation. If you have any questions about what's been covered in this presentation, your training materials, permits, project specifications, please direct them to your on-site alluvian biologist.